So I'd like to welcome to the studio Deputy Foreign Minister Sharren Haskel of the United Right Party. Sharren recently returned from a diplomatic visit to Italy, and she's been very active in interviewing to dozens of foreign media sites, and we have a lot to talk about. So thank you very much for coming to our studio, Sharren.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
So I want to start, we're filming on July 14th. So by the time this airs, things might have changed, and we know how things are.
Of course, every half an hour things change in Israel.
I do want to ask, how close are we now to reaching a hostage deal?
We're not there yet, unfortunately. Look, there's nothing more that we want than to bring them back home and as quickly and as safely as possible. We've said yes now, just in recent months, 3 times to a ceasefire. Unfortunately, Hamas has refused. Even now, when Witkoff took a few more steps towards Hamas's demands and put a new proposal on the table about 2.5 weeks ago, Israel said yes. Even though we had some issues, we said on the principle we can resolve it when we talk about the small details. But we said yes. And what did Hamas do? Came with another proposal that they suggested. I mean, this is not responding positively to that offer, to Witkoff's proposal. But even though they didn't reply positively, we decided to send a delegation to Doha, try to see whether we can bridge the gap. And so I told also the reporters, just pace yourself. We're not there yet. This is going to take a little bit of time because there's a lot of things to talk about. There's certain things we'll be able to go towards their demands, but some of the things they request is absolutely impossible.
Like what, for example?
This is Hamas's demands. They literally want Israel to surrender.
Okay.
Look, just 2 weeks ago, we've lost 5 soldiers in Bet Hanun. Bet Hanun is a neighborhood that we cleaned from Hamas 3 times. 3 times. So every time we have a ceasefire, it takes us back dramatically and gives Hamas the opportunity to take over back a lot of the territory, to put bombs in certain areas. It endangers our people. We pay a grave price for it. And so there's certain things that we have to make sure will stay to make sure Hamas will not hold any civilian or military power. We cannot surrender to Hamas. Because if we surrender to Hamas, it's only a matter of time before they can take another 250 hostages and hold them in those dungeons of torture. It's only a matter of time before they will go in and commit another massacre like they did. And so, the first thing in our mind is the hostages. That's why this war is being so long, so difficult, but we are committed for that. Israel is a country who cherishes life.
What do you say to critics who say that, the hostages don't have time, whereas, in any case, weeding out Hamas from Gaza will take years. So why not make a deal, even if it's a temporary surrender, so to speak, but taking into account the fact that the hostages need to be saved now, whereas Hamas can be defeated later on?
If you surrender to Hamas and withdraw all your troop back, and you have international guarantees, including the Americans, do you really believe we can go into another operation like that?
Tell me about that. Well, what does that mean, the American guarantees?
Look, at the end of the day, as we speak now as well, do you think Hamas is not listening to it? Do you think Hamas doesn't hear those statements of, experts who say, just deceive Hamas and then, go back after you take the hostages? Of course they're listening to it. That's why they demand from the Americans different guarantees. And so it doesn't work that way. The first agenda and the first thing we want is to bring back our family members home as quickly and as safely as possible. We work tirelessly for that. But at the same hand, to surrender to Hamas means it's only a matter of time before there are another round of hundreds of hostages, another massacre with thousands of dead. I mean, those crimes against humanity that were committed on the 7th of October, my role is to make sure this never happens again. And to make sure we know that Hamas cannot hold any civilian or military power. And I know it seems, like such a long time, But it takes a long time because we took concession, because we went into a ceasefire, because we withdraw our troop time after time, and then we have to do the whole operation over and over again. Why? Because we wanted to bring them back alive and as quickly as possible. This is our goal.
Yeah.
So it's a complicated situation. Things are not black and white like many people want to describe it.
So tell me a little bit about replacing Hamas's civilian capacities.
So we see how Hamas is panicking, especially during the last few weeks, because of the American company, the Gaza Humanitarian Fund, who's been working to distribute free aid. Look, Hamas holds two power. One is the military power and one is the civilian power. And from a full operational army, they turn into what is called as a guerrilla group. During the last ceasefire, when Gaza was flooded with humanitarian aid, you saw two things that were happening. One of them was Hamas was pocketing millions of dollars from that aid, selling it in the markets, taxing it, benefiting from it. The second thing is how we saw Hamas empowering its military back to its feet. Meaning that was the first time that Hamas was able to pay 100% of all Hamas's salaries since the 7th of October. It's the first time that we saw how Hamas is able to recruit new terrorists to fight in its rows, how to pay for weapons and arms.
Yeah.
And so it uses that humanitarian aid to arm itself again, which makes our life very difficult because then you have more terrorists you need to eliminate, more weapons they're acquiring, okay, and a morally strong terrorist organization where it feels it has the upper hand.
Right.
It takes you back dramatically.
So the idea is to somehow find a way to let aid into the civilian population without empowering Hamas.
Without going through Hamas. I refuse the statement or the fact that the United Nations or some people in the international community are trying to pose on us, which the humanitarian aid can only go through a terrorist organization. It doesn't work like that anywhere else in the world.
Right.
The fact is that in Yemen, when the Houthis were taking over some aid and were abducting humanitarian aid workers, the United Nations stopped the aid to Yemen. I mean, it's logic.
Right.
And so we had to make sure there's a facilitation of a different channel of humanitarian aid. There's the old channel. It doesn't work. Logistically, it's being looted. It sits and wait for trucks to come and pick it up. That's the old mechanism. It didn't work properly anyway. But then there's a new channel, okay, with free aid. They don't need to pay for it. It reaches directly the civilians. And Hamas is panicking because through the aid, Hamas is in control of the civilian population. If you control who eats, how much, where, who gets the shelter, who gets the medical assistant, then you're in control of the population. If the Americans are the one who are distributing the food and the shelter and anything else, then Hamas lose its power. And that's why they went in order to, destroy the reputation of this organization, fight it. It killed humanitarian aid worker, attacked a bus, attacked American workers as well, placed a bounty, a prize on the heads of any humanitarian worker so that it becomes a hostile environment. And so they are doing everything in their capability to shut that down. And the world needs to understand that if they continue to distribute aid through Hamas, it empowers them.
I understand.
It creates a longer war. It will have much more casualties. And the people who are paying the worst price are the Palestinians themselves.
So there's this idea that's come up in the cabinet meeting last night and repeatedly over the past couple of weeks about this new humanitarian city idea. There are those who are claiming that it's the use of the word concentration to concentrate the civilians. So tell me what the idea is and how do you answer critics?
I heard these statements, including Yair Golan. These are shameful. I have no idea how he's capable of waking up and looking in the mirror. He knows himself he's lying. On the one hand, him and all the other critics are saying, give shelters to civilians, to women, to children. What happens in Sudan and in Syria, in Afghanistan, or in Ukraine, any war zone? Okay, civilians can flee to neighboring countries to find refuge until the end of the war. Why don't Egypt, Jordan, Europe, they accept millions of Syrians but no Palestinians, including Egypt? How come that is so different? But yet the international community and Yair Golan is blaming the Israeli government for what the international community have politicized and created far greater casualties than what should have been, because they turn it into a political issue instead of a humanitarian issue that we need to resolve. And so they put the responsibility on the Israeli government. So now that the Israeli government is trying to resolve it by finding a humanitarian safe zone for civilian, we've been criticizing as well. So you need to make a choice. Either you take responsibility and you shelter them, or you accept what we see as a proper shelter for civilians. But coming and complaining and saying you need to be responsible and then not accepting the solution is idiotic. I'm sorry, but I'm not surprised. Because there's always a different standards towards Israel. Israel's always being blamed for everything, okay? But these are complete lies, and we know it. We put those sounds aside, and we will continue to do what is right. If anyone else has a different idea on how to shelter civilians, not through the proper channels of what happens all around the world, because they refuse, not by what the Israeli government has found fit as a humanitarian program, come and bring your idea. But I'm sorry, the only other solution for them is for us to surrender to Hamas, to keep Hamas, so that our children are going to be in danger for generations to come. That's not acceptable. I'm sorry.
So explain just the idea for those who aren't familiar. What is this idea of the humanitarian city?
It means a humanitarian zone, a safe zone for women. People who will enter there will try to make sure that these are not Hamas's as well. And that will be a safe area where you can also facilitate humanitarian aid. So you bring the organizations for food, for shelter, for medical aid, and you put them in one place where they can get all their needs, where they are safe from a war against Hamas. I mean, Hamas is using them. We've seen those images even in the start when Palestinians were trying to flee from the north to the south. Hamas's snipers were shooting them so they don't flee into a safe zone. It was Israeli soldiers who had to protect the Palestinians and eliminate the Hamas's snipers so that they have a safe route for refuge. So we know how Hamas is using them as a shield. We try to find a protected area where they can be safe until we're able to eliminate Hamas.
So once we eliminate Hamas, in the best case scenario, we somehow manage to build a humanitarian city, separate Hamas from civilians, defeat Hamas. The famous day after question: who will rule? What is Israel's strategy or policy about who will rule Gaza the day after we defeat Hamas?
Okay, it's a question that doesn't, it's not just Israel's to decide.
What do you think?
Look, there's a few different ideas. I think that one of the suggestions and some of the discussions that were made around it about an international committee with our Abrahamic friends that will be in charge not just of reconstruction, but on looking after the civilian aspect of it, about the education system and the sewage and everything that's needed. I mean, Gaza needs to be reconstructed.
Right.
I think that's probably a good idea. This will be in collaboration with Israel, with the Americans, to try and liberate the Palestinian society from the hold of terrorist organizations to live a better life. Look, one of the most important questions that I believe needs to be talked about is the education. In the Abraham Accords, one of the fundamental legs were education.
Right.
They reformed their curriculum to take out any anti-Semitic content put in. historical events like the Second World War, like the peace agreement with Egypt, the peace agreement with Jordan, to talk about a possibility of living side by side together in coexistence. The main conversation has to be about education, how to de-radicalize a population that's been indoctrinated for generations by a terrorist radical organization, a Nazi ISIS organization. That's the real conversation, because if you want to talk about a solution, about a process, we can talk about many things. If we want to talk about a future where Israelis and Palestinians can live side by side, we have to talk about education on how to really live side by side. And I think that Ron Dermer, he's Netanyahu's representative on this issue, and he's been having discussions since the beginning of the war. And it's been outside of the ear of the media, rightfully.
Yes.
Because every time something comes up, someone's trying to obliterate it.
Yeah.
But I think that finally a few months ago also, the Arab League sat down, started to have a conversation about the day after, where they refused before, which is a good step.
So if I understand you correctly, what you're saying is you think at least that the solution for the day after should be our Abrahamic partners somehow...
Like an international forum that's going to govern the civilian life until, maybe... I don't know if it can happen this generation, but maybe the next generation is going to be a leader that will want to live beside the Jews.
So parts of the government is speaking otherwise. We have, parts of Otzma Yehudit, Atzionut Datit, and parts of the Likud who are talking about full Israeli control over Gaza. So what you're saying is that that's not Israel's policy?
As you know, it's not Israel's policy.
Because those voices are quite loud and they make quite a lot of noise.
There's also extreme voices on the other side, like Yair Golan and other radical idea like Ehud Barak and Olmert, who's been speaking about very radical ideas on the left. And you know what? What's beautiful about Israel? Everybody are entitled to their opinion, and they can talk about it. Yeah, but they're pushing towards it, right? You see what they're doing in the media, how they're damaging Israel's reputation, lying, full out lying about what's been happening here because of political agenda. So they might not be politician, but the title of former prime ministers is giving them the authenticity of trying, as a political move, to try and not just lie and distort about the reality of what's happening here, but to try and push to a radical, impossible solution. So we can talk about it, we can discuss it, but at the end of the day, the ideas are coming to the cabinet. It's being voted there. And I think it's very clear what's been happening, and that's why Ron Dermer is the one to lead the issue of the day after.
So let's shift. We talked a lot about Gaza now, a little bit more than we spoke about it at length, which is great. You're the deputy foreign minister, so I want to shift a little bit to foreign policy, Israel's international standing. Could you just, in a brief few sentences, give us a briefing about the status of Israel's international standing at the moment in institutions such as the EU, the UN, with our partners and allies?
Okay, so I think that you need to see it through a few glasses. One of them is that our enemies are using the international forums to try and tie Israel hands in order to surrender to our enemies. And they've been using it not just now, but throughout many years. I think since the foundation of Israel, they've been using them, but it's very, very present during this war, and how they've abused international forums and organizations in order not just to blacken Israel's reputation, but to destroy Israel. If we cannot defend ourselves, how are we capable of surviving in such a hostile environment? Think about it. Which country had to face 6 different fronts, 6 different entities that have been fighting the country unprovoked? It's insane. And because we've shown strength and we are able to push them out, they've been trying to use the international forums, the media, spreading lies, propaganda, blood libels. But we know, Al Jazeera is the mouthpiece of the Muslim Brotherhood. It has a massive effect on the public opinion as well. But here in Israel, we see a lot of the negative side of it, and there's a lot of pressure. Countries like Spain, Norway, Ireland are very active and very extreme
South Africa.
in their point of view. Yeah, supporting terrorist organization, in support of the IRGC, in support of Hamas. These are terrorist organizations, and we've been fighting it with some of our allies and friends. You could hear the leader, the chancellor of Germany, at the G7 meeting saying, Israel's doing the dirty work of the world. And rightfully, we do. The only reason why, hopefully, we don't know exactly how it's going to turn yet, but in 5 years or 10 years from now, there won't be German or Italian or British or American soldiers on Iranian soil fighting a country with nuclear weapon, with mass destruction weapon, is because of what Israel did right now. There's an opportunity, a window, and that leadership understand and appreciate. We have many allies. But obviously with a biased, in many country, media, those anti-voices are getting a far greater stage to echo their messages than others.
Has there been any harm, media aside, in terms of actual, things that could actually damage Israel, sanctions or stuff like that? Has there been anything on the UN stage, the EU stage, or something like that that's hurt us?
Look,
especially, or is the situation in control? And
look, it's a battle that we are constantly fighting.
Right.
I just returned from Rome. Gideon was in Austria with the German chancellor and the foreign ministers together. He's going on different missions. We are all around Europe trying to tighten the bonds and the bridges. It's not something I can take for granted. This is work that we're actually doing to strengthen those friendships and to make sure that our allies stay with us, because there's always that pressure from other leadership to push it out. It's interesting. You need to understand this is not just about Israel. It's far greater than that.
What do you mean?
Look on the rise of anti-Semitism. The war is just an excuse. There's a wave of hatred going through Europe. It's being inflamed by a lot of immigration, Muslim immigration from the Middle East, with many countries who in their education system, the curriculum is anti-Semitic, is racist. Some of it is even Nazi. Then they're going into their new home, and instead of assimilating, they are pushing their beliefs, their culture, and their radical racist ideas about Jews in their new country. And you see, almost 200 seats, for example, in England, are being dictated, some in just a few votes, by radical Islamist communities. Very pro-Palestinian communities.
In the parliament?
Yeah.
Parliament?
Yeah. And that has a major effect on what those representatives are going to say, what they need to do in order to preserve their seats. I'm a politician as well. I can understand that. I think it's wrong. I think you should do first what's right for your country, for your people, to stand beside what's moral. But you can understand some of these politicians who are looking after their seats and what they need to voice out to please the crowd. And that plays a major role in what you see in some European countries' politics as well. That created also a massive wave of anti-Semitism, where, the lack of enforcement, it's being normalized, the lack of prosecution. And then there's no deterrence.
Right.
And then you see an interesting cycle where the far left, the socialists, the pro-Palestinians, the radical Islamists are joining forces and sometimes marching together with neo-Nazis on the far right against the Jews. So this war, in many cases, is just an excuse. The rapper that was singing in Glastonbury a few weeks ago, stating all these racist death chants to Jews. Before that, he was chanting to murder police in England. He hates the UK more than he hates Israel. This is sort of a fashion, an anti-Western democracy fashion. And it's been flooding Europe, America, Canada. And that is very, very dangerous. You know, I wrote an article a few weeks ago to the French newspaper, and I said, you know what? The Jews will always be safe. My grandma, who was attacked in Paris with fists and kicks, 88-year-old grandmother, I said, there's no room for Jews in France anymore. Come home. Come to Israel. But I'm not worried about the Jews. They will always have a shelter. What are the French going to do?
Interesting. Say something about the French-Saudi summit that we know is coming up.
I think, it's just another attempt to gain public international stage. Doesn't have a meaning. There's many countries who've declared Palestinian state. Did it change reality? No. There are more than, I think it was 98 parliament member in Israel who voted against the declaration of a Palestinian state. This is the Israeli public after the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust. And Macron is wanting to reward the terrorist organization Hamas with a state after the crimes against humanity they committed. Their Independence Day is going to be celebrated on the 7th of October. It's absurd.
From a foreign policy standpoint, these aren't just two minor countries. This is France and Saudi Arabia. They're our allies, our partners. Is Israel worried about the implications of this?
Look, I'm not worried because it doesn't have any meaning, any effective meaning.
You're saying it's more declaratory than...
I'll tell you what I'm worried about. Every declaration like that gives Hamas a breath of air. So when Hamas is listening constantly to international media, to Israeli media, to international events that are unfolding, every declaration like that, every actions against Israel takes us further from a ceasefire. Because they think, here it comes. Let's wait another month. Let's wait another week. Let's continue to say no, because here France comes and they're going to give us a gift, a state. So we just need to hold on a little bit further so that we can be rewarded.
So we designated our goals as taking out the nuclear threat and the ballistic threat. There's been different reports as to have we obliterated the threat to pushed it off to a few years. Now that we're a few weeks after the end of the operation, how successful was it, and what do you think the long-term implications are?
So first of all, I think it was very successful. You were talking about some of the isolation and what's happening in the international community. The Middle East is looking very closely on what Israel is doing, whether it's capable of defending itself. We got many points. We could hear the singing and the celebrations all around the Middle East after we were able to obliterate Iran's military nuclear program. It's not just a threat on Israel. The first threat is the Middle East. They are the biggest cause of instability, biggest funders of terrors.
But is the nuclear threat over, or?
So first of all, this operation was brilliant, very professional.
I don't think anyone has any questions.
No one, and that showed Israel's strength.
Okay.
And it opened doors that hopefully within a few months, the public will know much more about it as well.
You're talking about diplomatic doors?
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. Because in the Middle East, you understand strength. And people want to be close to you after they understand also your capability.
Yeah.
The other thing about the nuclear program that you've asked, look, our intelligence assessment and the picture that was built, the assessment is that we were able to push it back between 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
Now there's two options. We're in an intersection. That's why I said in the beginning that we have opportunities now. And this intersection means that Iran needs to make a decision. Is it going to go into a diplomatic channel, not like before where it's lying and deceiving the international community, and build a nuclear military program and weapon behind its back, but real diplomatic channels. They can import enriched uranium if they want it for civilian use or anything like that, but not enrich on their land, period. And if it wants, then it means the Middle East is going to be safer for generations to come. And the other one, if they want to continue the way that it was until now, and we will have to make sure that they will not reach, not the enriched uranium and not the facilities and not a new nuclear military program.
Has there been any indication, it's a very early stage, but to which of those two paths Iran seems to be heading on, or is it too early to tell? Because we've heard some militant...
our logic... I would say a Western democracy, a nation that believes in freedom and fight for freedom. Right. Our logic is not the IRGC logic. And I specifically say that because the Iranian logic, the Persian people, is our logic. But it's not their regime. This is a terrorist organization whose goal is world Islamic dominancy, Sharia, a caliphate, ruled by Iran. And when your highest cause is martyrdom, is death, how do you do diplomacy with that? So it's difficult. And that's why intelligence and keeping your eyes open in reality are so important.
Right.
I was asked by some reporters, they didn't have a nuclear military program. They only had this and that. They enriched until 60%. They had an enrichment facility, conversion facility, ballistic missile program, But they don't put the dots together. Oh, really?
Someone said if it looks like a duck, etc.
So if you are naive, you're not going to survive in the Middle East. I'm sorry. And that somewhat European naivety or Western democracy naivety, as if they think the same way, sorry, it doesn't work. And we'll have to keep our eyes open and our intelligence flowing and our military strength at its head, at the top of the age, and the quality. Today we understand how important is the quality of the weapons, of the technology, of your capabilities. And Israel will have to continue and lead that together with the Americans.
You mentioned opening doors. Were you referring to an expansion of the Abraham Accords?
Yes.
And can you say something about that?
No.
Nothing. Give me something.
Look, it seems like there's a few countries who would want to go into the Abraham Accords. They're going to enter on the right time.
Okay.
I think that President Trump has done unimaginable things. I think also Prime Minister Netanyahu. Striving towards those achievements to secure the Middle East, to create stability and bridges is incredible. If you look back a few years back, you won't imagine that's a possibility.
Right.
But as a strong leader, real leaders of the free world, that's what it means to be a leader of the free world, that you are strong and determined enough and can be tough in order to defend freedom. And I think they deserve the credit for that.
What's going on between Israel and Syria?
Look, we keep our eyes open. We are very concerned. I saw that yesterday Turkey led another attack on the Kurdish people.
That Israel has been supportive of.
It's not just Israel. The Western civilization owe the Kurdish people a debt.
Right.
They fought and destroyed ISIS, a serious threat for humanity. They paid a serious price, and we owe them a debt. And the regime in Syria is going to be judged by its actions towards the minority in Syria, whether it's the Kurdish, Alawi, Christian, Druze, and many others.
And what have you learned in the time since they've taken over?
We have to keep our eyes open.
But Israel is talking to the Syrian new Syrian regime, which is in itself a big deal.
First of all, there wasn't any reports of Israel's meeting officials, and it hasn't been happening in like channels and things like that. We are very concerned about the minorities.
Okay.
You understand our relationship also with the Druze community.
Of course.
If the needs of humanitarian aid that will be provided to them, and Israel did provide it, and the safety of them, we're greatly concerned for that. But there's a lot of trust that needs to be built, because don't forget, this leader was the leader of Al-Qaeda. It was a leader in ISIS.
Yeah.
This is a terrorist mind. And whether it can be reformed, I don't know. Many research here in Israel shows they can't. So it's going to be a serious question.
Saudi Arabia. How close are we to breakthrough?
Look, obviously it's being discussed throughout many years, including now. I think that the leadership needs to make a decision. And I think...
Leadership here or in Saudi Arabia?
In Saudi Arabia. I heard even a statement talking how they shouldn't sacrifice the future of the Saudi people because of the Palestinian cause. And how the Palestinian leadership have destroyed so many opportunities. I mean, the offer for a Palestinian state was there on the table for years, multiple times. They refused. They didn't want it. Why? Because their bigger goal was not a Palestinian state. It was to obliterate the state of Israel, killing all the Jews in Israel and out. It's a religious cause. It's not a territorial aspiration. In a sense of a state, but for the entire land. And I think that the Saudis needs to make that choice as well, like Egypt did, like Jordan did, like the Emiratis, Bahrain did.
Saudi Arabia seems to be saying that they seem to have made the choice, which is that they will not normalize with Israel until there's a clear path to Palestinian statehood. So are you saying that
I think first of all, they need to make that choice. But as you heard, these are reports as well. And many statements like that we've heard before. We heard it from the Egyptians. Do we have a peace agreement? We heard it from the Jordanians. Do we have a peace agreement with them? So
you're saying peace is possible with Saudi Arabia, even if we don't necessarily accept their demands.
I believe so.
Sharren Haskel, thank you very much. That was fascinating.
The pleasure was all mine.
Thank you. Thank you
Great.
very much.
Thank you so much.